So, for those that don't know, I'm a British bloke, originally from the Manchester area, a place called Rochdale, a satellite town near Manchester. And I've been living in Finland now for just over 5 years. I'm living in Pori. So what I'm going to talk about in this video is the top 10 things that's changed about me. How has Finland changed me? That's the question. How has living here changed me? So I'll tell you. So the first thing is I'm now far more in tune with nature than I ever have been in the past. So when I lived in England, particularly when I lived in Croydon, I remember when I first met my wife, she sort of said, "Oh, should we go for a walk?" Now basically where I lived was in the old town of Croydon, so there was no nature. I think I think everybody would agree that Britain is a densely populated island, a little island, and countryside that's accessible, that's not kind of fenced off and made private and trespassers will be prosecuted. There's not much of it available, and people will travel for many hours. They'll put their bikes on the back of cars and go on long train journeys to get to the countryside that they can freely roam in. In Finland, in contrast, you have this everyman's rights. The countryside is absolutely beautiful. Forests, you're not far from lakes, thousands of lakes, rivers, rapids, lovely beaches, believe it or not. Check out some of my other videos. Look at one called Utri. I'll put that up on the screen now so you can kind of Google it and check it out yourself. So lots and lots of lovely nature to enjoy. The other thing as well that I would say is that the difference between the seasons in Finland is more marked. So for example, in the summer here it can be plus 30 and you get, I don't know, close to 24 hours of daylight. Whereas in the winter time you might only have 2 or 3 hours, or 4 hours maybe, of twilight, but it's still bright with the snow and the frost and the pine trees, and again it can be absolutely spectacular. So you've got beautiful nature, but it also changes according to the time of year. The same location can look very different in plus 30 compared to how it looks when it's in the middle of winter and it might be minus 30, you know, as you can imagine. Whereas in England you get much less difference between the seasons, and the same place looks more or less similar. I think as well on that theme, because I'm more in wild nature, I see far more wild animals, you know, so deer, for example, elk, you know, like moose, seen them whilst I've been here. So also all sorts, because I live near this estuary that leads out onto the sea, so there's loads and loads of water here. So cormorants, various types of eagles, sea eagles, I don't know what that's actually called in English, but people travel quite long distances to come to this part of the world to look at birds. Yeah, so the nature, like hares, like giant. And the other day I actually saw some deer walking right down the middle of our road outside my house. Now you definitely wouldn't get that living in Croydon, and I like it. I actually really enjoy appreciating the seasons, and the flora and fauna. I guess the other thing as well that's quite interesting is, you know, as you get older, I've certainly learnt to appreciate the passing of time. So the ebbs and flows of the year, you know, according to the season. And I kind of feel just more in touch with the world basically, and me and my place within the world, because I'm close to nature. I think this is why, you know, the funny handshake gang and the powers that shouldn't be, that's why they're so keen for us to be on screens and not be grounded and connected to nature. So I think, you know, if I was still living in Britain, I hope I'd be sort of making every single effort that I could to get out into the nature that I am allowed to access, and make the effort. You know, including, for example, swimming in the sea. That can be done in Britain. A second way in which Finland's changed me is that I'm now far more active than I used to be. And the simple reason for that is there's more opportunities to be active. So I think one of the main reasons why I never used to go out for a walk when I lived in Croydon was there wasn't really anywhere pleasant to walk. I like cycling. I do an awful lot of cycling whilst I'm here, and one of the main reasons for that is I can go wherever I want to. I can take a cycle path into Pori. So for example, tonight there's an ice hockey match, and it's quite warm at the moment. We're almost in December and there's no snow yet, so I'll probably take the bike into town. So that's about 13-14 kilometers. So, you know, when that's all done, I'll have got a bit of it. I've cycled like over 25k. You know, I'm walking to the shops now. In England, I think there's less kind of opportunities for exercise. Like for example, with cycling, where I used to live in Guildford as well, let alone Croydon, I didn't feel it was safe to cycle because the roads were too small. There was no separate bike paths, and it was just the cost benefit was not in line with me making a decision to do exercise in the form of cycling. Social norms also play their part. You know, if you see other people doing certain things, it can give you ideas. You know, I think, well, that looks good, maybe I'll give that a try. And if you see a lot of people doing something and it becomes normal, well then, you know, like this is the normie, isn't it? You might end up thinking, well, why not give it a go? And that's certainly the case with exercise. No matter what time of day it is, time of year, you'll always see Finns, different ages, grannies, young kids. It's very much an outdoors country. People go outside and they go for walks and they ride their bikes, and it's kind of part and parcel of living in Finland. And I like that. It's given me encouragement not to be a lazy git and get off the sofa. And I try to do some sort of aerobic exercise for about an hour a day. Now obviously that's quite important in terms of health, isn't it? Not just physical health, but mental health. You know, it's important to get out. And I think the other thing as well is that Finns don't stop. Like today, it's not a great day. It's a bit grey, and it's a bit like an English winter's day, if I'm being honest, where it's about 7 or 8 degrees and grey, and it's not raining, but it's a bit like, for me, give me -15, blue sky, lovely. And Finns would say that there's a famous saying in Finnish that there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. So one of the things about living here is that you've got to have also miles more clothes, because you've got to dress up for many different weather conditions. Whereas in England, you can more or less, you know, the winters aren't that cold, the summers aren't that hot. You can basically wear the same wardrobe 12 months of the year, practically. So as you can gather, that's been a very big thing that's happened to me, is that I always used to be sporty, used to play football and cricket when I was younger, but I really like being more active here and living a more outdoorsy type of life. You know, even stuff like going into the forest and picking berries in the summer, autumn, and mushrooms as well, and then coming back home and eating all of that stuff. Absolutely fantastic. I've not got into the elk hunting yet. I'm not sure whether I'm too old for that, but could be, you never know. I have to go and get a gun and learn how to use it. But it is actually quite a common hobby here. Quite a lot of people hunt deer, elk, and it provides some great high quality animal protein that is, of course, free of charge if you've killed it. So in terms of my development, I think the next stage for me is to become less squeamish, you know, about things like butchering meat and stuff. I've got a lot better at it, but I need to get even more developed in that sense. Finns are very, very practical people, and when I came here I was very impractical, and I'm now slightly less impractical than I once was, and I like that. I really do. I think it gives you a sense of meaning and purpose, doesn't it? Just doing, I think in England people look down their noses a bit at skilled manual work, whereas here in Finland that same sort of snobbery doesn't exist, and I like that, and it started to change me as well. The third way in which Finland's changed me is that I'm now far less materialistic than I used to be. Now that's like quite remarkable, really, in that I think I wasn't very materialistic to begin with when I lived in England, but since I've been here I've become even more like it. And again, I think, you know, when I was in England, particularly in Guildford, there was a lot of status anxiety. You know, a lot of people in England, they have this life where they consume status symbols, wear the right clothes, have to have a newish car every so often, and because they're kind of they believe it's useful in becoming socially accepted, you know, to have the right material possessions. It's all about acceptance. Now when I lived in England, as I say, I didn't accept that, and I kind of riled aggressively against it. So I used to take great pleasure in, you know, driving around in an old car. I didn't really give a damn what people thought about it. But you know, now I'm here, I'm now with more like-minded people. In Finland, it's just not acceptable to do boasting, particularly about things that you own. It's kind of almost the worst thing that anybody could possibly do. And if you try doing it, rather than gaining social approval, the opposite is going to be the case here. You're going to be like viewed as being a bit of a plonker if you sort of brag about the stuff that you own or wear expensive brand names and stuff like that. It's not that Finns don't dress well, like they do, but they'll tend to dress minus the expensive brand names, you know, that are on prominent display, that seem to be sort of an increasingly common aspect of life in England. You know, these big logos, Hugo Boss and all of that jazz. So I like that. I like the fact that people are a bit more down to earth here, and they're less inclined to judge you according to the things that you own and you publicly display. So there's no sort of class system in Finland, and I really like that. So there's much less social class anxiety, because there isn't any social classes, you see. It might be slightly different in Helsinki, but I can't really comment on that. So up here in Pori on the west coast, you'll see a lot of old cars driving around, and I just think it's more interesting. People will take great pleasure in buying older stuff and doing it up, and it's like a bit of more of a nostalgia vibe rather than an in-your-face kind of crass materialism. Oh, look, you know, like, look how much this stuff that I've got costs. It's not like that here. It's cooler, I think. It's cooler, more of often a retro vibe to things, which I like. In fact, I've been thinking of doing this for a while now, of doing a video about cars in Finland. That Jeff buys cars guy, he would be in heaven here, because it's like so many sort of, especially like the you know, the Finnish blokes, it's one of their favourite hobbies is buying old cars and kind of like working on them in the garage. And then, you know, many people have more than one car. You know, houses are a bit bigger, there's more land, so there's actually space. There's no one really has to park on the street here, you know, out in the countryside. So basically people have quite a lot of cars and they drive around in the summer. And you know, in England you wouldn't be seen dead in some of the sort of stuff that, you know, people will buy, like an old Lada or something, or a Trabant, or these big kind of American 1950s cars. You know, in England people would think you were a hobo or something if you were driving around in those, whereas here it's seen as being like pretty cool, and I like that, I really do. The fourth way in which Finland's changed me is that I don't eat in public anymore. And you know, when I go back and visit Britain, and when I remember Britain, there's so much eating on the go that happens. You know, people eating whilst they're walking, and that's probably why there's a lot of litter. People just throw the wrappers on the floor because they're eating as they go. Eating on public transport, same sort of thing happens. Here it's just not socially acceptable to do it. And again, you know, you start observing people and you think, well, yeah, it seems like a good idea, doesn't it? You know, like waiting till you get home and then you sit down around a table. And in fact, actually, it's very common in Finland, when you get invited round to somebody's house for a coffee, you'll have the coffee around the kitchen table and sit down and talk. Whereas in England, you know, it tended to be, you might head to the lounge and sit down there. So I like that. I like the fact that, and it's also mindful, isn't it? You're more mindful, and probably less inclined to kind of binge eat sort of crap, basically. Less snacking and eating at home, sitting down with a knife and fork rather than eating handheld food. Really good. I really like that, and I'm very glad that living in Finland has changed me in that regard too, that I don't eat outside anymore. I don't sort of think it's acceptable because everyone else is doing it. I suppose what I'm saying here is that I've actually learnt through observation. I've seen people, Finns, doing things slightly different from what I was used to, and I thought about it and I thought, yeah, that's a good idea. I'm going to emulate that because I think that would improve my life too. So it's not like blind normie copying. It's like I've looked at it and I thought, oh, why are they doing that? Yeah, I understand. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Fifth thing that Finland's done that's ended up changing me is reduced alcohol consumption. So it's quite interesting is that Finns don't really tend to do any sort of lunchtime drinking in pubs. In fact, most pubs are not open during the daytime at all. They only open in the evening, and it's just not socially acceptable to go to a pub, you know, for a lunchtime pint and a chinwag. It's not the sort of thing that's done. People will kind of think, oh, you've got an alcohol problem. So again, I've kind of looked at that, and do I miss sometimes a lunchtime drink? On balance, no, I don't. So that's another thing that's good about Finland that's changed me. The only problem with that is that when you do go out for a drink in the evening with a Finn, for me personally, you can get ambushed, because the Finnish tolerance level for alcohol is remarkable, especially given how infrequent the average Finn drinks. They're not frequent drinkers, but even despite that, when they do drink, the amount of volume that they can put away, well, I just can't keep up with them at all. And I don't try to keep up with them. Number 5 basically comes from my wife, who's a Finn, and I asked her, how do you think Finland's changed me? And the first thing that she said was, oh, it's made you more sociable. You're now far more inclined to talk to people that you don't know and do small talk and make conversation. So I thought about that, and I think she's right. Now, I think there's some reasons for it. Now, the first reason will probably have some Finns shaking their head in disagreement. They're not going to go along with what I've got to say here. In many ways, Finns have some myths that they hold about themselves, about the Finnish national character. And one of those myths, I think, is that, Finns don't do small talk. Now, it might just be me, I don't know, I might have a smiley face or whatever, but what I find, or what I've found since I've been here, is that Finns certainly are more inclined to do small talk with strangers than what I experienced, particularly when I was living in Guildford. Manchester might be different. I think Pori line and the people from Pori and Mancunians, there might not be too much in it. Mancunians are fond of a chat and they'll strike up a conversation with anybody. And that's sort of similar to what I've found in Pori as well, the part of Finland that I'm living in. And because of that, I'm more likely to open my mouth because I'm less likely to get blanked. And in fact, many Finns will start conversations with me. So they're actually, in the main, very, very friendly and very inclined to start up conversations. And that often happens in the sauna when I go for a swim, for example, or just in shops or at the ice hockey match, people will start talking. I guess as well, there's not many British people living in Pori, so I'm a bit exotic as well. And I think maybe what I've experienced is partially Finns wanting to practice their English, or they're just curious about a Brit and why he's living in Finland. And I don't mind at all talking about that. So if you're from Pori and you're watching this video, don't be worried about having a chat with me, because I'm more than happy to chew the fat, as we say in England. But I think, if I'm being honest, there's another factor as well, which that's contributed to me changing and becoming more outgoing, and that's obviously, you know, the people's pantomime and the biomedical fascism and stuff like that. And what I could say, if I was summarising this very quickly, is that I'm more self-confident. I used to overestimate other people's intelligence and wisdom and maybe defer to them a little bit too much. Whereas now I know what the truth is about, you know, about other people and about myself relative to them, and I'm a lot more self-confident. So that might also explain why I'm more outgoing since I've been living here. And again, just one more thing as well is that I certainly am not worried about what normies and NPCs think about me, because I know what they did and what they went along with. So, like, why would I be interested in what those people think about me? Because, you know, I know all about them, and what they did was absolutely terrible. And I certainly shouldn't have an inferiority complex towards any of these kind of normie NPC automatons. Seventh thing that's happened to me, I've changed as a result of living in Finland, is I eat healthier and I'm more likely to cook from scratch. And you know, the reason for that is primarily the Finnish supermarkets, in that they sell much less processed food, and high quality single ingredients are pretty affordable here. You can get excellent meat here, excellent fish, and I'm a bit more chilled out since I've been here, and I've got more time, so I've been retired, so I'm more likely to start cooking from scratch, and obviously that's been improving my health. It's not the same for in every single Finnish household, but I think it's more common for Finns to cook than kind of average British households. There's not that kind of same culture of like that normie family that I saw in Bramley. You know, there's 3 of them in the family, and you know, one of them has one microwave Bing meal from Marks and Spencer's, a vegan one or something, and then the bloke will have some other one, and then the daughter will have another type of Bing meal, and you know, they'll eat it watching TV and all of that. So that type of culture doesn't really, it's not as prominent here in Finland, and I'm glad about that. You know, when you visit people's houses and stuff, it's just, as I say, home cooked food, sat around a table, eating with knives and forks rather than with fingers. Love it. So is there a theme developing here? Thinking about it now, I think there is. And that theme basically is that living in Finland's a little bit like going back in time. Finland's old-fashioned from my perspective as a Brit, in that many of the things that Finns do now is what I remember growing up in the 70s. You know, a lot of home cooking, family time. Finns are very into family, socialising within families, communal eating, communal cooking. I like it, it's great. 8th thing that's happened to me, that's changed me as a result of living here, is that my English has improved. And the reason for that is me learning Finnish. And Finnish is actually quite a complex language in terms of its grammatical structure. So me learning another language has taught me something about, or many things about my own language, and it's the grammatical structure of English. And yeah, I recommend this actually, particularly when you're my age. I'm 60, nearly 61, is learning a new language. It's good. Learning new skills is good. And I think it's possible for people to, you know, young kids as well, from what I see, it's very easy for them to learn 2 different languages at the same time. And it seems to, I think, strengthen the primary language. You know, the mother tongue language certainly doesn't suffer when you learn a foreign language. It seems to be the opposite, actually. That's what I've observed personally with myself, and then also with you know, bilingual kids, both here and back when I used to live in England, because there were some Finnish kids that I knew, other Finnish families that used to go to a Finnish school in Camberley. The 9th way in which Finland's changed me is that I'm more laid back now than I used to be. And I also appreciate more eccentricity, you know, in other people. Now, again, growing up in the 70s back in England, I remember a lot of eccentricity, and it was socially acceptable to be eccentric. Whereas I think what's happened, you know, with the woke revolution in Britain is it's a culture of like conformity, cloying conformity, and people who are eccentric, well, they might get reported to the police, you know, because they might be viewed as being dangerous or whatever. I'm more laid back about people being different, really. Two examples. There's some dude in Pori who basically spends his day cycling around in pink clothes with a pink cowboy hat, pulling a trailer with a ghetto blaster on it. I don't know why he does it, but does it bother me? Does it harm me? I'm pretty chilled about it. I just think it's quite funny. You know, you also have the phenomena in England of you know, football fans and stuff like that. Here in Pori, you know, you have like kind of this one guy in particular who's very, very, very eccentric. The newspapers write about him, and so this, yeah, I like that. I like that eccentricity. Finns, they're more flamboyant dressers actually. There's greater varieties of hairstyle and people wearing different types of clothing, and I like it. I like it. So I'm embracing eccentricity, and I'm very chilled about that. So I think what adding to this, social expectations in Finland are kind of more flexible, you know, especially I think for women. So you know, again, it's just such a shame really that I think in England you've still got this kind of princess factor, princess expectation for women, and here it's not like that at all. There's miles more women participating in sport. Women can do more or less what they want to do. The 10th and final way in which Finland's changed me is that I've fallen back in love with music again. Now there's many different reasons for this. Well, the first one is that there's lots of interesting new music being made in Finland that's sung in Finnish, in a way that there wasn't really in England. You know, a lot of it was, I don't know, like drum and bass and rap and all of that, Stormzy, and all of that. I got turned off music when I was towards the end living in England. So there's lots of different music genres. You know, if you're a Brit, a lot of people think, oh, it must be all heavy metal and that, but it's not. There's all sorts of different types of music, traditional music, and iskelmaa, like this more dance kind of orientated music. Maybe I'll do a video on that too. Oh, the other thing as well that's helped me to revive my interest in music is affordable music festivals. So here in Pori there's like 4 at the moment, and yeah, it's not you don't have to take out a mortgage to get a ticket. So like a 2-day festival might cost you €100, something like that, or 3 days actually, so about €100 for the iskelmaa festival. And then the final thing as well is that you've got a lot of kind of nerdy Finnish guys refurbing old hi-fi. So I've been able to buy some really tasty classic hi-fi that guys have refurbished, and I've been able to buy it for, well, I'll do a video on that just to sort of show you the stuff that you can buy here. And the same is true for kind of buying CDs and records. They're pretty affordable here. So all of that, you know, I've got back into music again. Sorry about the wind. It's almost becoming a bit stormy. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and that's my video on the 10 ways in which Finland has changed me, a bloke from Rochdale that's found himself living in Pori, Satakunta in southwest Finland. So yeah, that's all I want to say today. So God bless.